Hello and welcome to day 5. So today we're going to be talking about lesson management. So yesterday was lesson structure, but now we're going to be talking about managing various aspects of your class. So not only managing behaviour, which is perhaps what was the first thing that came to your mind when I said lesson management, but also managing systems that you need to have in place and managing learners' needs. So, and I would suggest that all of those three are intertwined. If you consider one, you'll be considering the others too. So we are going to break it down like that and talk about each of those now. So management systems, now you need to have these in place for several reasons. One of them is that if you have systems in place that you have planned for, you're going to be that much more confident in delivering your class, in delivering your lesson. But also having systems means that you're going to be consistent from week to week in terms of your approach and the delivery. And consistency is a really key word for kids, for them to manage themselves within your class, for them to be in the sweet spot for learning. They need to be able to predict what's happening just in terms of the systems, not in terms of the learning necessarily, but in terms of the systems in place. And you will want them to be able to manage their expectations of what's going to happen in your class. And this is the very first step to making sure that they are going to be happy, that they're going to learn, that you've created a learning environment that's conducive to learning. So I would suggest the very first system that needs to be in place is your system of planning. You need to have planned out your lesson, obviously, but you also need to make sure that you've got all your resources ready before the lesson. I tend to lay out mine in piles of classes because there's nothing worse than being in a lesson, having kind of 6 kids watching you, staring at you, waiting for you to make your next move, and you're having to dig around in your bag. So making sure that you have all of your materials together really helps. And that all comes really before the lesson. The other thing that I would suggest is making sure that you have a system for checking that everything's working. I've actually come across this recently when we went from online back to in person, and somehow all of the headphones have now completely failed, and I spent the first lesson just going around dealing with these headphone issues and having to find ones that did work within the classroom, and that was not a good situation in terms of teaching and learning. Luckily the kids know me so well that they were able to just sit and wait, and but if the kids don't know you so well, or they are liable to try and push boundaries, press a few buttons, if you know what I mean, then they'll take that opportunity and leap on it. So planning, making sure your resources are together, and making sure that everything is in place and working are a really good idea. The next one is largely going to relate to your structure that we talked about yesterday. So if you think about the different sections of your lesson, you want to be thinking about, what is my system for moving them around the classroom? What's my system for when I'm doing teacher modelling? I find the teacher modelling part is the part where their attention might drift because you're expecting them all to be looking at the same place and you're not necessarily able to see them all because, as I said, they're standing around me, they're next to me. I might not be able to see what they're doing. So therefore, in fact, some of them stand in front of me, and I will make sure that I've got, particular children right next to me if I need to. But at that point, I have certain rules in place, like they know they're not allowed to touch the piano while I'm demonstrating. They need to listen. They need to. I often point at the music as I'm playing. So they need to watch. They need to sing. There's certain things that they know that I'm expecting from them, and same goes for when we're at the keyboards. So do you have a system in place for when we're at the when you send them to the keyboard? So do they not touch the keyboard until their headphones are on, or just different things that will minimize kind of disruptive behavior or anyone trying to kind of take advantage and go off task. I'm also very clear that when people are performing, everyone takes their headphones off and listens and claps, and we have a kind of a performance system. So I think you get my drift. We're basically making sure that we are communicating what we expect of our children at every part of the lesson. And by the way, it's very difficult for them to meet your expectations, and your expectations should be high, but it's very difficult for them to meet your expectations if you haven't communicated what they are. So don't feel like, I've occasionally felt being guilty of feeling like they're supposed to be here to have fun, I don't want to be super strict. And you don't have to be strict, you can be firm but kind. And we're all going to have our own individual styles, but telling them, communicating with them in terms of what your expectations are is super important. And it might be that once you get started, your kind of systems change a little bit. So I've got a situation, for example, where say I'm playing different clips on the piano, different extracts on the piano, and I expect them for this type of extract to be tiptoeing and for this to be stomping around the room, so they're kind of like dancing around the room. I have learnt that it's a really good idea, as soon as you've done kind of a perfect cadence and they can hear that, which is another good kind of oral task, get them to sit down in between your playings, especially if you're going to do more than 2 different types actually. So therefore you've just got that little bit of bringing them back together, and then they can stand up and do the next one. And I learnt that just because something happened in one of my classes where everyone just started running around. So your systems and your expectations will evolve. Just also making sure that you have systems for your resources. So I have colouring pencils and normal pencils. Actually, at the moment, I'm getting them to bring their own in because of COVID. But normally, and I have all these magnetic counters, I have pom-poms, I have all sorts of props. And I bring them out and I put them back in exactly the same way every week. So the kids know. They know what's happening. They know what to expect. Okay, so managing resources as well. So that is a little bit about management systems. So managing learning behaviour, we're not just talking about behaviour in the sense of, is a child being disruptive? We're talking about behaviour that is conducive to learning. So behaving in a way that means that a child can take on new information, can progress within your class, can be curious, can evidence what they've done, etc. So just bear that in mind when I talk about learning behaviour. Now, we definitely need a good balance when it comes to learning behaviour. I don't want children to be, what we would traditionally call disruptive and really loud and running around the room. But equally, I don't want my children to be super quiet and to sit in silence and to not respond to anything I'm saying, which can be almost as bad when you're in a very creative subject like music, and you need that kind of creative feedback from them. And you want them to respond to the music and you want them to express themselves. So we've kind of got these 2 ends of the spectrum. We don't want either of them. We want kind of in the middle. We want curious and engaged and enthusiastic, but also attentive, possibly quite calm. I'm a very calm teacher, so I quite like my kids to be calm. But we're all different. I know some teachers that really like everyone to be completely crazy, so it really depends on you as a teacher, but the main point is we are nurturing and fostering an environment where everyone is in their sweet spot for learning. They've got those big sparkly eyes, ready to learn, ready to listen to what you're saying. Okay, so as I said, we need to think about all aspects of behaviour, and we're all kind of triggered by different behaviours as well. So and we have multiple personalities in our class, right? So I am always determined as a teacher to nurture the very quiet, shy children who, you know, they go through life, they go through all their lessons just probably, you know, at the back, not being heard, completely silent, never putting their hand up. Probably because I've got a child that's like that, so I really relate to it and get frustrated by teachers that just let her kind of coast along and not really try and bring her out of herself. So that's probably why I feel that way, and I will do everything I can to nurture them, to hear their voice, to let their voice be heard, because they are not used to that, and it's a very safe environment in my class. So the really big personalities know that actually I like to hear from everyone. I'm not just going to let them dictate and kind of have all the attention. I'm going to make sure that I hear from everyone. So, and there's various things that you can do to make sure that that happens, but it really depends on on you as a person. We're just human beings. What type of child do you feel like you're really good with? What type of child do you think that you really want to work on your skills with? And, you know, I've been teaching for many years, and I still have a particular type of child that I don't think I cope with very well, and constantly working towards trying to cope better with them, for me not to be triggered by them. And I think one really important element for any kind of child with any kind of personality is positivity, and making sure that you always praise, even if you've got a child that's kind of making lots of bad choices, but the second they make one good choice, you pounce on it and you give that good choice lots of attention. So being really positive, noticing the children that are doing the right thing and pointing that out. So there are lots of things you can do to make sure that your classroom is full of eager learners. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, let me just check my notes. Hang on, there we go. There are certain things that you can do to make sure that you are capturing all of these different types of personality and trying to make sure that, as I said, the environment that you are developing is really conducive to learning. So one of them is pace. You need to make sure that you're planning for a variety of activities, because some people are very visual, some people are very auditory, some people are kinesthetic. We have those are the three main groups. They either like to see things, they like to hear things, or they like to do things. And so you plan activities that kind of nurture all of those different personalities, and also develop the ones that they perhaps don't feel so skilled at. So you're giving them that opportunity. And that's the great thing about groups, is that they are, if we were to teach one person, we are kind of really honing in on what they respond to. But if you are teaching lots of children, you need to put everything out there, and they will all experience the different types. I think that pace is really important, because you probably need to move at a fairly fast pace, particularly with the younger ones, as I said the other day. And you will get to learn not only in terms of your own teaching style, but also in terms of like the different classes. I've got 2 classes that are the same level, and the way that I have to be with them is completely different, which is amazing. But you'll learn that actually this class needs it to be a bit more energetic and faster, and this class needs it to be a little bit slower. So you kind of get used to it. I would say that it's probably not a good idea if you're kind of trying to make a learning point, if you're doing something that's teaching something in particular and you can see it's not really being taken in, if they're not really accessing what it is you're doing, then just abandon, move on, write it down in your post-lesson notes as something that didn't work, and try and think of a different approach with that learning point. Don't give up, but just try and take it from another angle. There are other things you can do to help with learning behaviour. You can organise your seating in a certain way. I really like it when we're all facing each other. Obviously, COVID times are not really meant to do that, so at the moment everyone's just facing me. But when we're facing each other and I'm included in that, I have to say, when I used to teach 30 children, I remember walking into my classroom one day and one of the other teachers had moved the room around so that all the kids were facing each other. And I found that really different to what I was used to. So if you want them facing each other so they get that sense of being in a team, making eye contact, being social, but you want to be involved in that seating. I think you want to be involved either in the circle or in the rectangle that I showed you on the first day. So seating is important. On the keyboards, as I said to you, I like them to be facing each other as well and being in a little orchestra. Something else you could do to help with learning behaviour, if someone is quite a visual learner, they might like some displays. So I've got lots of interesting things to look at in my classroom because it is actually a music classroom in a school. So there are lots of displays about the different musical elements and instruments. And there's one of oh my goodness, what they call those yellow creatures. I've completely lost the word. There's one of those from Despicable Me. You know what I mean? A minion. There's one of a minion because apparently they show really good posture for singing. So, and they always point that one out. And I've got my coloured ukuleles on the wall. They love that. So, having, visuals around the room is really helpful. When you do exercises, when you do games, when you send them to the keyboard, it's a really good idea to give them a time expectation. So, right, we're going to spend 5 minutes on this, or you've got another 2 minutes left, guys. I'm going to hear you in 2 minutes. That kind of keeps the motivation, keeps the on-task behaviour on track. Okay, those are my tips about learning behaviours. So now we're going to think about managing learning needs. So we've talked about learning behaviour. Learning needs and learning behaviour are very much intertwined. But if you get the managing learning needs right, you're likely to get the managing learning behaviour right. Because they are so, as I say, they're so linked that if you make the work too difficult and not accessible to the kids, that's when they might play up and not focus and you've lost them. And if you make it too easy, the same thing might happen. So kind of managing, and of course we've got lots of different children in the classroom, so what's accessible to one child might be too difficult for another. So you've got all of those things to contend with. So you have to pitch the learning at the right level and at multiple levels, really. Therefore, you want to make sure that there are opportunities both for simplifying what you're doing, but also extending the learning. So if someone is able to do something very easily, then you've got to be ready with something else for them to do that's linked to, just a slightly more difficult version of what everyone is doing. You need to know that it's okay to divert from the lesson plan if everything's going horribly wrong, because there's nothing worse than trying to, as I said earlier, trying to labour a point that's not going down, and then finding that the kids, you lose them and they start to kind of lack that focus that we need. So those are all important tools for you to have. The other thing is that you want to plan for, in terms of learning needs, it's really good to plan for whole group learning, for pair learning, that I usually put them in pairs when they're doing games. So we might play some games as a whole group, but we might also play some games in pairs, and also for individual learning. And that gives you lots of opportunities to check what everyone's doing, to monitor. It gives them opportunities to learn in different ways, learning with peers, learning from peers, but also learning that they need to kind of practice and develop these independent learning skills. And I know that it might be suggested by some that you could have a whole lesson of group learning. But I think that I know that the way in my system, the way that I teach and the way that the Keynotes program is laid out, if I were to try and teach everyone together all of the time, and that means, keyboards out loud all of the time, I wouldn't be able to differentiate. I wouldn't be able to say, right, okay, you're going to play it this way, you're going to play it that way, because I would completely lose them. So for me, those headphone kind of sessions, and they don't need to be very long, but those sessions are really important for keeping the learning going, keeping them engaged, keeping them moving along at a pace that's appropriate to them as an individual. So that is why I include keyboard headphone time, even though we're all learning the same piece. Okay. There are other things that you can do to evidence and assess learning. You could hold up posters that check. I put a post into the Facebook group the other day of something I did on Saturday, which is we're talking about melody and whether it's going up or down. And so I was playing some melodies on the piano, some little phrases, and they had to hold up a poster that said up or down. So I could very quickly see who didn't quite grasp this concept and who would need further consolidation. And then next week, I will turn that into ascending and descending. So it's the same concept, but I've got a new word for it. I've got, new vocab coming in. So you're it's that managing the learners in terms of planning for that scaffolding, planning for that building up and progression of knowledge and understanding and skills is really important. You will want to do quick checks, like what are your main objectives for the class, for this lesson, for the level overall. We talked about this yesterday, but I often have the kids come to the keyboard or to the main piano and show me either that they can find a note that we're looking at, or for my slightly older classes that they can achieve a certain technique we're talking about, that I sometimes spotlight certain parts, certain motifs, certain bars or measures in the music, and then I would just check that they are able to do those before sending them off to the keyboard, so that I've given them that kind of teacher instruction individually. And that's just a super quick check. So the rest of the class are fine. They're happy to just line up and take their turn, and you don't want to be long with that one. Then, of course, you'll be doing lots of kind of monitoring when they're on the keyboards and they're practicing with their headphones. So that is when you would go around, and you're going to get used to the idea of, you're going to know who in your class will need you probably first, and that's either the ones that they get to the piano, the keyboard, and they're able to play it straight away, so you need to extend them, or the ones that are going to some children, in terms of their personality, have a little bit of a mindset issue with getting on with things, so you know that you're going to need to just get them started. You'll get to know the rough order that you'll need to go in, and it will change, of course, with if there's someone that's out of character, needing help or whatever, but you just adjust as you go. So just managing those learning needs at the keyboard and making sure that you are both supporting and extending those that need it. I actually really missed, when we were online, I really missed that ability that I have in person of looking at all of my 6 or 8 players. I can see 6 at one time, then 2 are over there, and very, very quickly being able to make an assessment about how they're accessing it and who I need to go for first. If I can see that someone's just got their finger 2 out and they're just playing loads of, maybe they're playing the correct notes, but then I'll be like, okay, I need to intervene straight away with that one, because you don't want them to, muscle memory, you don't want them to get stuck on doing it that way. And then you will want to do lots of monitoring and feedback at the end of the lesson when you do the performance. This is another opportunity for you to manage learners and their needs. So finding out how they got on with the piece by performing it. It's, I think music and the piano is a subject where we can so easily they can so easily evidence how they've accessed the learning because it's through the piece of music that they're playing so often. So you'll go round and I think I talked about this yesterday, but you'll go around and you'll listen to them all and you'll give them a what they did well and a next step type thing. And then you, by the end of that lesson, even though you've got a group of learners in front of you, if you've taken all those opportunities to check their learning, to check their understanding, to listen, to feedback, to monitor, then you will have a really good idea at the end of every lesson what has happened, who has done what, who will need further consolidation, who will need to, you know, if you're at the end of a kind of whatever level you're in, you might learn who needs to move up to the next level, etc. So you're constantly monitoring them. And if you are managing learners' needs and providing enough stretch and challenge and support to each individual, then, as I say, that's how it's linked to managing learning behaviour, because if they're learning at a level that's suitable to them, then their focus, their curiosity, enthusiasm, their self-efficacy is a word I love, that all kind of falls into place it's much more likely to fall into place. Just for those, self-efficacy, for those that haven't heard that term, I did a whole essay on this when I was doing my MA. It's really interesting, and it is all about having a person believing they can do something. So if they have good levels, high levels of self-efficacy, it means that they believe that they can do it, and therefore they will try. They'll put the effort in because they believe it's worth it, because they know they'll achieve it. The opposite of that, which can happen so often in music, is this kind of lack of self-efficacy. Well, I'm not musical, I can't do it. I just can't do it, so I'm not going to try. If they're not going to try, they're never going to do it, right? So it's a mindset thing. We talk a lot in my lessons about growth mindset. I can't do it yet. So those are all learning characteristics that we need to be thinking about in our classroom. So that's it. That's the 5 days. We've talked about lesson management today, and we are going to have a live Zoom Q&A meeting later. So it's 7 p.m. UK time. I believe that is 2 p.m. Eastern time. And basically what we will do is I've got a few questions already submitted, so I will read those out and answer them. But what I would really love, I'm not very good at talking to myself, what I would really love is for you guys to turn up, even if it's to watch others, to tell me you know, what you've taken from this week, to ask me any questions, just to get a really good discussion about launching your beginner groups and seeing where everyone is at. So the link is in your challenge area. Just turn up, but I will be recording it and putting the recording into the group when it's done, so you can have a watch of it. As I say though, I do really prefer doing Q&As with people rather than reading out questions that have been pre-submitted, so please do come. And on Monday, so if you get your kind of homework tasks and all of your ideas posted into the Facebook group over the weekend, and there'll be a deadline of Sunday night, let's call it midnight Pacific time, because that's I think the latest, the Sunday midnight Pacific, the latest time zone. And then on Monday I will release a bonus video that will announce the winner of our competition, which is to post as many things into the Facebook group, your challenge homework, any of your ideas, to comment on posts, etc. And the winner gets 3 months free access to the Keynotes music program. So I'll announce a winner, but also I just couldn't leave this challenge without really going through in more detail how to manage individual needs within a group, you know, in a piano class. Okay, I've been referring to how I stretch and challenge and differentiate quite a lot, so I'm going to show you how I do it. Okay, hopefully see you